Hi, I'm Thomas Senna, co-host of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast.
And I'm Jeremy Dove, co-host of the Bigger Than the Game podcast.
Jeremy and I have joined forces to create a new podcast called Pop Culture 5 to ask the question, what are the 5 essential things about any given pop culture topic?
It could be 5 essential movies by an actor of our choice.
Or 5 essential songs by a musician of our choice.
We're not making a list of our personal favorites, it's the essentials.
And we better do a good job of justifying our essentials because one of us will have veto power each episode.
And I'm ready to tell Thomas why he's wrong.
All right, Jeremy, all right. Well, actually, why don't we give everyone an out-of-context peek at what we've been up to? So Pharrell was right next to me, and we looked at each other, and we were kind of like bobbing our heads. He wasn't wearing his hat. Nobody really knew he was kind of incognito. But I had to do a double take. I'm like, that's Pharrell. And then he looked at me.
You just slipped that in there, this big name drop here. I was next to my man Pharrell. Like, whoa. I never heard this, everyone.
So join us to celebrate and discuss the essentials of pop culture.
Listen and subscribe to Pop Culture 5 wherever you get your podcast.
Hey, it's time to gather around the water cooler to talk the SNL Hall of Fame.
All right. Thank you, JD. All right. Welcome to the SNL Water Cooler Podcast. We got a good one today. I'm joined here with my co-host, Shari.
Woohoo! Got my water bottle right here.
As do I. And yes, I am excited for 2 reasons. 1, the subject of today's episode is a great one. And 2, I'm happy because this is one of Shari's favorite cast members. Yeah. So it's like, not only am I happy to talk about it for myself, but I'm happy to talk about it with Shari because I know that's one of her favorite cast members. So Shari, if you wouldn't mind telling us who our subject is and about the podcast, the Hall of Fame podcast.
Yes, this was as Thomas, as Joe said, this is one of my favorites. And of course, I'm getting ahead of myself because Thomas is on the podcast that we're here to talk about, the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. And Thomas is joined by a fabulous guest, Sammy Kaye, known for many things that he does on the Saturday Night Network. He has a special super fans takeover that he does, and he was just on the Hot Take show not too long ago. And Sammy's here to talk about, as Joe alluded to, one of my favorites, the great Bobby Moynihan. And he and Thomas do a fantastic job of taking us through Bobby's many, many years on Saturday Night Live as a cast member. They discuss all of his many characters on Weekend Update, including, but not limited to, Drunk Uncle, as well as some of his impressions like Snooki. Bobby was quite a fan favorite on Weekend Update, but he was also in so many sketches, so many, where he was sometimes the second banana, like in the very famous David S. Pumpkins. Sometimes more in the forefront, like the blind date sketch that Sammy kind of reminded us all about. I had forgot about that one. So they really break it down. They go through many of his sketches, but they can't possibly hit on all of them. And really break down Bobby's time as a utility player, stressing how he was just always able to get it in the clutch. He was just one of those SNL cast members that could just fill a hole whenever needed. And every episode he's in, he's great. And I couldn't agree with that more. So what do you think, Joe?
Now, absolutely. This is a guy who, even though he's not like an easily recognizable name like Bill Hader is, he was all over the place when he was during his tenure on Saturday Night Live. He popped up a lot in many, many different forms. He had many different shades to him. He could do loud, like in the Job Quitter sketch they did with Cecily Strong. He could do quiet, like how he was in the Kitty Cat sketch. He had different attitudes, like where he was embarrassed in the wrestling promo. And then, but I really he was really one of the best Weekend Update, performers. Not anchors, but correspondents. With Anthony I'm not gonna say that right. The guy that always would Telltale Secondhand, which was one of my favorites. And then obviously a big crowd favorite, and not just mine, and I'm sure of everyone's, is Drunk Uncle, which was a sketch, or which was a character that, kind of like pushed the boundaries of like what you could say. Like that's a character that, because he's from a different era, because he's drunk, because of all this, you're able to kind of get away with saying these very un-PC things, with the way he's talking about a bygone era and the way things used to be. But then again, he would butcher it, and it was just a great character that you could keep bringing back. They just keep bringing back, and he was just absolutely magnificent in that. And then and again, I even touched on his impressions. We could just keep going on and on about this. I'm not even sure if there's enough room, on the internet to talk about everything that he did. So, anyway, so yeah, so I can't wait to hear this. What are your favorite Bobby Moynihan moments?
Oh, I love everything. I loved him in David S. Pumpkins. And I did not realize that he actually helped write that sketch with Mikey Day. And and Sammy and Thomas talk about how he doesn't need to be the star. He wrote that sketch. He could have made himself the star, but he didn't. He wrote that sketch for Tom Hanks, and what a crowd pleaser, a true modern classic. So yeah, that's just one of the many. He's good in everything. Whether he's the star or not, he's just always so funny. I loved Riblet, and Riblet he kind of just pulled out of the sort of the end of his tenure. So he only did Riblet a few times. It was so funny, and they talk about the way he gelled so well with the Weekend Update hosts, whether it was Seth Meyers or Colin Jost. And he was just, they talked also about the great sketch. And we talked about Adam Driver earlier in the season. They talked about that great sketch that he did with Taran Killam, which I didn't realize he also helped write the undercover boss, Kylo Ren. That is Bobby and Taran as well. So we could go on and on, but I'm going to try to keep us on track since we don't have JD. Yeah. We don't have JD this week, but we're going to stay on track. So JD would ask at this time, Joe, he would ask, who do you think who's already in the Hall of Fame? Who do you think? Is there anybody who has a comparable trajectory or career to Bobby, someone who's already in?
I'm going to say Bill Hader. I think if Bobby had a similar post SNL career, the way Bill Hader did with Barry, they would be just parallel. Basically it's they're parallel on Saturday Night Live, and then once they leave, they're different. Because like I said earlier, they're both great utility players where you could put them. I kind of said this about Lovitz and Farley last week, where they could do their characters, and then also be the customer number 3. But with Bill and Bobby, they just had so many different characters. They could and also caricatures of it's not even they're doing accurate impressions. They're doing caricatures, which is obviously best for Saturday Night Live. Especially with Bobby's George Lucas and Guy Fieri.
I forgot the
Chris
George
Christie.
Lucas.
George Lucas, because it's hard to like. All right, because this is where his nerd, flag shines. Where like not many people know how to like what would a George Lucas impression be, and if you watch these interviews, he just kind of mumbles, and it's like impersonating someone that mumbles isn't really might not be entertaining, but he does it. He does it accurately, and stuff like that. So but yeah, like so they both are known for their like celebrity caricatures, as well as their characters. They both. Ooh, bless you. They both were great on the update. So yeah, like if there's someone that's already in the Hall of Fame that I'm going to compare them to, it's Bill Hader. I kind of usually when I want to compare someone like this, like I kind of do a different generation, but it's just when I was going down the list, I was like, no, that's Bill reminds me of Bobby. Bobby reminds me of Bill. So, yeah, that's who I think. And you?
Oh, that's an interesting comparison because I feel like Bill was so much more of a superstar than Bobby. But you're right, as far
Mm-hmm.
as their talent wise, they're absolutely comparable. So that is a great, great choice. I'm going to go with a way different generation. Bobby reminds me a lot of Jane Curtin because
Okay.
she was this kind of quiet, unsung hero. And people really learned to appreciate Jane more after she was off the show. And I think people are starting to appreciate Bobby more that he's off the show. Also, just like Bobby, Jane was a utility player. You could throw her into
Mm-hmm.
anything and she could make it work. And again, she was often not the star of the sketch. She was often a secondary player, much like Bobby. So I see them as very parallel as well. So two very different choices, but work work equally well. So
Yeah.
very cool. All right, here's my next question. In this one, I think there's even more choices. Who on the current
Mm-hmm.
ballot, and there's 41 people on the current ballot, uh, who on the current ballot, and you can pick a couple because there's many. Who on the current ballot do you think compares to Bobby as well?
I'm gonna go with again a similar generation. Will Forte.
Mm,
Now, this is another quality I want to point out about Bobby is uh they both ooh, they both have these unique random senses of humor. Like when you get into a sketch with them, you don't know like what you're gonna get. You don't know if you're gonna get a high energy, low energy, you know, non sequitur. Um, you know, because that's I love Will Forte's humor, and I feel like Bobby Moynihan has something similar where there isn't a quote Bobby Moynihan type of sketch. There isn't like he's all over the place, and I feel like Will Forte is kind of like that too, where um, the Falconer, and then
mhm,
I'm trying to get other MacGruber,
mhm.
but yeah, there is no specific style. Like he could play a little boy, he could play an adult, and I could keep going. As I keep saying, I could keep going on, but yeah, their humor is just way you know, silly, very silly, random humor. So yeah, that's why I picked Will Forte.
Excellent. That was another excellent choice. And I do see a lot of similarities between Will and Bobby. So, once again, Joe, excellent choice. I went for the same generation. In fact, I went for the same cast because Sammy and Thomas talk so much about how Bobby and Taram Killam seem to have like this
Okay,
symbiotic relationship. And I didn't realize, I guess
yeah.
they wrote a lot of sketches together, which was fascinating to me. But I think they have a very similar trajectory on the ballot. I think they're similar. I was looking at percentages though, Joe, and
Hmm.
Taram last ballot only got like 15%, which I think is really
Mm.
low. I think Bobby's going to do a lot better than that. I think he's a little more well-known than Taram, but it's interesting because they were so similar and their sensibilities were similar. So, and very interesting. So I guess we're ready for that time in the show where you and I talk about our feelings about the various nominees. We talk about U2 compared to Jack White, compared to Ellen Zweibel, compared to Charles Barkley, compared to Danny DeVito, compared to Garrett Morris, compared to Shari O'Terry, compared to Joe Piscopo, compared to Julia Louis-Dreyfus, compared to Adam Driver, compared to Bobby Moynihan, compared to Beck Bennett, compared to Bob Odenkirk, compared to John Lovitz. Whew, what a mouthful. Okay, Joe.
Yep.
I'm going to let you break it down and tell me what you think, because I know you go by your feelings, and I do. I try to guess what the voters are going to vote. So let me know, Joe, where do you have your 14? How are they stacked with this latest nominee?
Okay, I'm going to go bottom up.
All righty.
So
number 14.
Again, here we go. 14. Jack White, great musician. Didn't really interact with the show that much. And by the way, I do want to recommend that Rolling Stone article that was brought up last week. So it is a great article about musicians on Saturday Night Live. So anyway, Jack White, and then U2, who's I just think it was a little bit of a better band on Saturday Night Live than Jack White was. Then Charles Barkley, because as I keep saying, great host, not really a great actor. Then Danny DeVito, who had a great run but hasn't done anything in 25 years. Then Julie Louis-Dreyfus, who is on a great run but is spread out a lot. Then Driver, who again is on a great run and has been on a great run for the last couple of years. So then Shari O'Terry, who did 5 years and then left and was on anniversary shows but never came back to cameo. Like when Will Ferrell hosted, could have came back, not necessarily as the cheerleaders, but just as something. Then Beck Bennett, who a lot of great stuff, pre-tapes and live stuff. Another great utility player who I probably could have picked to be similar to Bobby. Then Joe Piscopo, who kind of held down the fort after Lauren and the cast left. Then John Lovitz, because he's John Lovitz. I mean, he's just, he, like I said last week, he was in 2 great periods of SNL. Like, I guess chapters is the better word, where, the first year Lauren came back and then the second golden era. And then Bobby Moynihan. That's where I'm putting Bobby. Because when I was watching his best of and and stuff like that on YouTube and whatnot, I was like, man, this guy's way better than I remembered. And then Odenkirk for giving us Van Down by the River, among other things. Then Zweibel for giving us a lot of great stuff in the first 5 years. And then Garrett Morris, because, like I keep saying, he deserves more recognition, and this is the least that, we can do. And then, that's my list.
Nice job.
And then
Joe.
I put the word rank on my list. And then I got a hole in my notebook. And then I got...
Good job.
So,
good job,
all
Joe.
right.
All right, here's my...
Shari?
Yes, I'm ready. This is my 14, and I'm going 14 up. Number 14 is U2 for me. It's a little bit different from Joe, but like I said, this is the way I think the voters are going to vote. I think U2 is going to be dead last because I just don't think they're as known as they used to be. I think Jack White is a little bit in the zeitgeist still, so I'm putting him at 13. 12, Mr. Zweibel, because again, as I always talk about, people have short memories. Charles Barkley at number 11, excuse me. Number 10, Mr. Danny DeVito. Number 9, this is where I'm putting Garrett Morris. Right above him, Shari O'Terry. The great Joe Piscopo above him, above her. She's number 8. Number 7, Joe Piscopo, just above her. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is number 6. 5 would be Driver. 4, this is where I'm putting Bobby Moynihan. And just above him, Beck Bennett. And finally, rounding it out, number 2, the great Bob Odenkirk, for creating the wonderful Matt Foley. And finally, at number 1, and I think he's going to make it in, is Mr. John Lovitz. So that's how I think the voters are going to vote. That's how I think the voters are going to vote. But I guess we'll see. All right, let's talk about the final words. Each show, Thomas always asks our guest to give some final words.
So now's the time here, Sammy. We're talking to voters. We're talking to the water cooler people. Why should SNL Hall of Fame voters consider Bobby Moynihan for the SNL Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Moynihan he is a team player, and I think for SNL to be a thriving sketch comedy show and to be the institution that is, you need guys that are going to come off the bench and just absolutely deliver, whether they're the star of a sketch or whether they're just a background player giving you a look. And that's what you get from Bobby Moynihan. You get the definition of a utility player, somebody who is an absolute king on the Weekend Update desk with so many memorable characters. And like we've mentioned throughout this episode, you can go, pick a random episode of SNL from his time on the show, and you're going to get something great from Bobby Moynihan every time you come and check out an episode that he's in. So, I think he just has so many different comedy tools in his tool belt, and I think that is what makes him such an awesome SNL cast member and deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
So those were Sammy's final words. Do you agree, Joe?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you know what? I mean, I think, I really do hope Bobby makes it in because he does deserve recognition for, everything that he did. Right now I'm looking at his playlist and it's just the thumbnails of everything that he did, and it is just a wide variety. In sketches, in update, impressions, being the straight man. I mean, it just goes on. I mean, so yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that he said. I don't even know what else to add to it, so I'm just gonna throw it to you. What do you think?
Oh, I love Bobby, and again, he's not on my ballot currently because, as I keep saying, I don't have enough room, Joe. I know you have room on yours. I have no room because I don't want to let go of any. My mind still hasn't been changed. I don't want to let go of anybody I currently have on, especially since most of the ones, and this is a perfect segue, most of the ones I have on are people who are going to be, or at least a large chunk, are folks who are not going to be on after this ballot. They're going to be removed from the ballot because they've been on 5 seasons. So that's when we're going to transition into our next segment. Since we're recording this on a Saturday afternoon and the new episode hasn't been on yet, but we're going to talk about that episode next week. So never you fear, you'll hear Joe and my and JD's Hall of Shame and Hall of Fame next week. But this week we're going to talk about those who are going to be gone from the ballot. And I'm just going to refresh your memory, Joe, that these are the ones that will not be season 7. They will not be on the season 7 ballot, so they need to get in. Paul Appel, Jack Handy, Dave Grohl, Candice Bergen, and Paul Rudd. My first question, because this is a 2-parter. So my first question for both of us is there ones in that list that you absolutely want to see in the Hall of Fame, Joe?
I mean, I'm looking at this list, and I'm just gonna. It's almost like I want to rank them.
Oh, go for it! Yeah, go for it.
I kind of want to rank. I mean, I would have to put more thought into it, but I just want to go through them one by one.
Okay.
And it's almost like Candice Bergen is one of the first female hosts.
She was the first.
And she's just Yeah. What?
She was the first female host.
Yeah, she was. Okay, I thought so. I wasn't sure if it was her or Lily Tomlin.
Nope, it was Candace.
Yeah, okay, then yeah, and then she's Candace Bergen is just a legendary actress, and because of like Murphy Brown, she was able to come back and host in different generations. She's also a 5-timer, and it's like, she deserves recognition. Then and then I'm surprised people aren't voting Paul Rudd. Like everyone loves Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is just so lovable in multiple ways. SNL, or he just does. You know, he's in SNL. He's in the Marvel universe, and he's just able to just be just so likable. And again, 5-timer. And then after that, Dave Grohl, musical guest for multiple generations. And if you want to talk about great SNL musical performances, I mean, I have a soft spot for Foo Fighters, but he was the drummer for Nirvana when they did Teen Spirit. And there was also the SNL, everything you need to know about SNL history. They just covered this last week, where I guess Nirvana, on the end of their second song, I guess they destroyed their instruments, which is very rock and roller. But then I know, right?
Yes.
So then here's the other two is, again, I feel like not only do musicians get the short end of the stick, but so do the writers.
Yes.
So we got Jack Handey and Paul Appel, who, even though Jack Handey never, as far as I know, hasn't had any screen time, but still, just those deep thoughts, those are his. And I'm sure if we deep dived into it, we could see his hand into, because he was in the second golden age of Saturday Night Live with Conan, Odenkirk, Smigel.
Yep.
Bonnie and Terry Turner, and I, keep going on. So he was in that. He was on an Emmy-winning, and then Paul Appel, who did have screen time and helped write the cheerleaders. She would be in those monologues, the Q&A monologues. And she wrote with Molly Shannon and such. And she's that's another one who I just wish, people could just see what work she did. And again, I wish that YouTube or Peacock would do a thing with where you watch the sketch and on kind of like how MTV used to have the host or the singer and the name of the song in the corner.
Right.
I wish they would do that with SNL sketches, where you could see the name of the sketch and
the writer,
the host and the writer.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. That would be so cool. And then if you saw that and you saw the common thread, of oh, this sketch is written by her and so is this and that, you would be like, oh my God, she's, amazing. You just would see her name pop up a lot in a lot of great sketches. And I'm sure same with Jack Handey. But anyway, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that listeners, if you are interested in Paul Appel and Jack Handey and Dave Grohl and Candace Bergen and Paul Rudd, if you're interested in any of them and you can't remember some of their contributions to Saturday Night Live, each one of them has a terrific episode. And you can, of course, go to Duvra and you can listen to those episodes in their entirety, and they will refresh your memory as to the sketches Jack Handey has written. There are many. I didn't realize how many. People think of Deep Thoughts because it's got his name on it, but he's done way, way more. And Paul Appel and the influence that she's had on people like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and a lot of the other cast members she's mentioned by all of them. So just wanted to shout that out, that if you're interested in learning more, please go back and listen to the episodes. I don't think I have to say too much more because Joe hit on it. The only one that maybe I'm not as big into is Paul Rudd, but I do agree with everything Joe said. He's a Hall of Fame host. He is a Hall of Fame host. So let's get some of these folks in this ballot because they're going away and we've only got one season left and they won't be in that season. So great discussion, Joe. I really hope we see some of those. I hope we see some of those folks. I hope we see Bobby, showing up. Let's let's make this a big full. Last year they only voted 3 people in, so hopefully it'll be a bit more than that this time around. But I guess that brings us to the end already, Joe. The time just flies when you and I are chatting about SNL. It just flies. But we're going to be here next week for number 15. Can you believe it, Joe? We're at cast member.
I know, right?
We're at cast member number 15. Thomas will be joined by Rebecca North, and they will be talking about another favorite that I know you and I and JD are going to have a great time discussing, Aidy Bryant. So that will be next week. Next week, we'll also be talking about the episode we were unable to talk about this week. That'll be the Charlie XCX hosted and musical guest. I'm curious to see. I'll be messaging you tonight about this one, Joe, because I'm curious what it's going to be like. So yeah, that'll be next week. We'll be talking about the Charlie XCX episode because there's not an episode next week. And we'll be discussing the great Aidy Bryant. So it's going to be a great, great show. So until then, from me and from Joe, stay thirsty.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame Water Cooler. To connect with Joe and Shari, join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/SNLHOF. To email the cast, write to snlhofwc@gmail.com. Please subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts.
To podcasts and such.